One more thing I want to share and let you know about our healthcare recruitment leaders exchange that we have just recently started up. And I think if I can share my screen, there we go. Yeah. We've just started up our healthcare recruitment leaders exchange. This is for directors and above who are involved in talent acquisition in healthcare. We had been hearing from a lot of our folks that we talk to in healthcare that the leaders are looking for opportunities to network with each other. And so we wanted to give people an opportunity to come together, and we have got about 30 people signed up so far. We just had our first call last week and had a really great discussion as an initial discussion. They were helping us to plant some seeds about what they would like to see in a networking exchange, recruitment leaders exchange. And so, and we've got others signing up since. So Elliot, I think is going to post that link in the chat, and it's on the screen here, but you can feel free to join. And if you know other directors and above in healthcare, please share with them as well so that they can join us as well. So, and at the end of this call, and Elliot mentioned that we have a webinar series on healthcare recruitment. I'm going to tell you about our next webinar that we already have set up coming up down the road. So I'll share that at the end as well. So thanks to everyone who is posting the comments and saying hello in the chat already. This is great. And we're seeing maybe some people are having some technical difficulties. Hopefully they can hear us now. Let us know if, oh yeah, there's a note here that if you refresh your YouTube, it should work, is the recommendation from someone in our team. So that's great. Okay, great. So let's start a conversation about retention and the challenge of retention in healthcare. We've been talking, and as we said in the introduction to this, that everyone's been talking about recruitment. There's been such a need for recruitment in healthcare, especially over the last 2 or 3 years. And this year, it seems we've been noticing a lot more healthcare organizations are starting to talk more about retention. They've been thinking about retention, but it seems like the trend is really moving to retention now. I spoke to someone the other day in a hospital setting who said that their title was recruitment and retention manager. And I thought that was great because I don't always hear that people having those titles. Usually it's recruitment, and this person had a focus on both, which I think is great for the organization. So, but Molly and Raelynn and I have thought it would be a great topic to bring up, as so many people are thinking about retention. Molly and Raelynn have some really great ideas to share, and we wanted to do that today. So let's get started. So I'm going to start with you, Molly. And if you could tell me, what do we mean by healthcare recruitment and retention being two sides of the healthcare HR coin?
Yeah, Patrick, I think that's a great question. And here's what I would tell you is from sitting in the healthcare recruiting chair, is my goal was always for them to keep the nurses we already had so that it would reduce the stress and the need for recruitment. So in my opinion, anything you do for retention helps recruitment, and really vice versa. Anything you're doing for recruitment can help you with retention. So I do think it's all just the give and take between the two. And it can be everything from how you're working with, you look at your benefits, from your application process to training and things like that for your new hires. So we can go a whole lot of directions, but I think that the key thing for me is most recruiters I know want you to keep the ones you already have, because they don't want to fill a job again. So anything we can do to help you recruit and retain the right people, and that's the key, right? If you recruit the right people, they will stay.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's that leaky bucket problem, right? I mean, you can do all you can on recruitment, but man, if you're not able to keep the people that are there. Someone I was speaking to yesterday, she said they're not so picky when it comes to hiring nurses because they really need nurses across the board in the hospital setting that she's in. And but what she said was, I am going to look and see if they job hop, because that's going to be a concern for me if they have a history of job hopping. So yeah, so that's just one element of retention, right? Raelynn, what are your thoughts about this?
Well, I love the analogy of the coin because we're talking about big dollars being spent on the labor force in healthcare. And a lot of the training that I've been doing is helping HR leaders talk like finance and vice versa. Because from a finance lens, if you think, oh, we can't meet our budget, we're going to let our people go. And then you're bringing them back because you need people to deliver the care. So over the years, we've had this incredible churn in healthcare. People are leaving because they're burnt out and they're tired, but it's really, really expensive to replace staff.
Hmm.
And so when I've been talking to healthcare leaders and asking, what is your turnover rate? What does it cost to replace staff? A lot of people haven't put it into those financial terms. They're just like, well, it's a problem. We have to recruit. We have to hire an agency. Okay, let's
Yeah.
start putting some money down and say, what would it cost for you to just continually recruit and lose those people versus retaining the people you have in place? And so you can make a real financial argument that there's a really, really high return on investment for anything that you do to retain staff. And we're going to get into some details and
Hmm.
some solutions around it. But the coin is so valuable, it's so rare. I know I was talking to a leader in Ontario. I'm in Saskatchewan now, leading a team of 70 awesome people and really trying to help them stay. But my colleague in Ontario said that they're under a freeze on leadership development. Okay,
Hmm.
that's not great, people. We need to work on building great leaders who create great culture where people want to stay. And so when you bring somebody in, they're part of an amazing culture. They want to live and grow and thrive in their career. That's when we really start to see some sustainability in the system.
For sure. Yeah. So that's really key. So obviously recruiting, but keeping people in there is healthy across the board for the organization. And yeah, and speaking of sustainability, you really want people who have corporate memory and experience. One of the biggest problems that I'm hearing from nurses is that they're so concerned about being on the front line without mentorship, right? Without that leadership, people with lots of experience and feeling like they're being thrown into the fires. So so many elements about keeping people over the long term. Okay, that's great. So let's talk about the. Actually, if you can start with giving some examples, Molly. You recently posted, and I was just looking to try and share that blog that you recently posted, which was really interesting. And you're going to, I think, talk about some examples that you shared in the blog. This is your blog post here, so I wanted people to see it. Your Sunflower Talent Strategies blog, and I think we'll try and get that in the chat as well. But you've posted some great examples there. So if you could talk about things you wanted to share today in terms of some examples of where this is a good fit.
Yeah, what I would say is, again, if you're trying to get people to stay, I think the very, very best tool is a stay interview. So always start there. And I know Raelynn has a wonderful model for that. So I think that's one. And then I think it's your application process and how you work with your candidates. You said earlier, Patrick, that somebody was eliminating people that are job hopping. And my philosophy around job hopping is they just haven't found the right home yet. And it's about finding out what's driving them and then finding and making sure that what you have to offer fits what they are looking for. So I think those would be two things. I think flexibility and letting people work when they can and not work. You're going to retain the people that are leaving their job or full-time employment because something is going on in their lives that is drawing more attention. So could they go part-time, or could they go to shift work or something else that's different, but still keeps them with your organization, and not let all of that brain drain happen. So those would be top of mind. Application process and career paths are always very interesting. And if you can draw that clear career path for your candidates, they're going to stay because they have that next destination in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say application process, I still mean both internally and externally. I think sometimes we forget that internals are applicants too. And so what do we do to prefer them? How do we streamline their process? Because they already know about the company. They don't need as much attention as an external, but they should have preferred and special attention paid to them because they are so integral to your organization. So
Couple of things you touched on the last one. The application process is so critical for everybody, right? Internal and
Right.
external. And that is a big challenge we're seeing across organizations that they're struggling with. Some are down the road. They've made some improvements, and I know we're going to chat a bit more about that. I think Raelynn has some thoughts about that. Also, Molly, I wanted to thank you for mentioning the stay interview example. And we did have a great webinar a few months ago, the three of us talking about stay interviews. We got a great response on that. So back to the link where you can find all of our history on our webinars, the recordings. You can find the stay interview webinar that the three of us did a few months ago. So thanks for mentioning that, and another good example. Raelynn.
Yeah, so your question was some examples of something we can do to help both
Right.
recruitment and retention. And I think, right now we're in a really critical time. Everyone's paying attention, and there's a lot of focus, there's a lot of media on this problem in healthcare. So it's hard to recruit. People are selective. They're looking for great experiences. They're not just looking for a paycheck. They're looking for a really innovative culture that's flexible, that helps them grow. So right now we're in this downward spiral where we're not able to offer these great experiences. There's some violence, there's some negative media around this. So right now it's really a poor reputation. People aren't excited about joining healthcare. We got to turn it around, and we need to start creating an upward spiral where people have a great interview process. They hear some words of hope and being part of the solution. They have career laddering. They're excited to join. They're onboarded in an excellent manner because your conversations with them are long-term retention and engaging and in a great candidate experience. So then people start to thrive and grow, and then they start to attract and then recommend. And this is the upward spiral we want to get to, where we actually get to a surplus state of excellent career opportunities where we can draw from retail and hospitality and tech and all these sectors that have been beat up through
Healthcare
COVID.
is recruiting against everybody, right?
Well, and we're recruiting against each other. So,
Yep.
what's going on in Ireland and the UK and what's happening, in Singapore, and, everyone is, fighting for the same talent. And, we're seeing provinces in Canada compete for one another. The way we can compete is to offer a really excellent candidate experience. All those people that are coming in that funnel are interested in your job. How are you treating them? We're only letting one drip through. That whole funnel is filled with people who have energy and time to spare on this problem. So let's bring them in and let's find the right fit. If there's a manager who repeatedly is losing staff because they're burnt out and they're not having the proper conversations, let's help support that manager. Sorry, I get very excited about this, but Molly, you talk about my philosophy on people who jump around is you have a very innovative, mature approach to how we treat staff. A lot of people say, well, why would I hire them if they're going to leave? Or why would I hire her if she's going to go on a pregnancy leave? Or, there's this sort of negative view about people not meeting expectations. Oh my gosh, we need everybody coming to healthcare. Bring them in, treat them right, give them opportunity, give them flexibility, and let's see where we can get to in this problem. So it changed a shift in the mindset of our leaders.
For sure. And giving them opportunities, that's something that comes up time and again when we're having this conversation. People need to have both professional development opportunities. They want to be in an organization where they feel they have an opportunity to grow themselves, and also they want to see ideally that they're going to have opportunities to grow internally in the organization, right? So maybe they will be able to go off and work somewhere else once they've got some great experience and training, but also let's hope they can stay within the organization and we can retain them longer. And if it means they're going to go to a different unit or a different part of the organization, great. It's great for them, and it's still great for the organization.
Yeah, and just one further thought on that. Like some people say, well, it's going to take time for us to redesign our recruitment process in months. Yes, but the way you could start is making eye contact, saying good morning, right? You can be that kind of leader that engages, that cares for people, because ultimately they want to be paid competitively, but they want to work for a compassionate organization that sees them, hears them, supports them. And you can start doing that tomorrow.
For sure. That's right. I want to say there's a few questions popping up in the chat, and that looks really great. If people can continue to post your questions, we will probably get to those in a few minutes. So I don't want you to think we're ignoring you, but we'll look at those questions in a few minutes, and feel free. Let's get your feedback and comments in the chat. That would be great. We've got some more examples coming up here. So let's talk about when we spoke the other day, the three of us, as we were preparing for this, Molly, I think it was, suggested that there's 3 buckets for responding to this important work: the processes, policies, and leadership training, which has already been touched on. So if we could follow those 3 lines, the 3 buckets, and think about some tangible examples that healthcare organizations can use to address this problem falling under those 3 buckets. Let's talk about that. Who would like to start? Raelynn, do you want to start with some input around the processes?
Yeah, and it might get to Kevin's question, which are some of the low-cost things you can
Right.
do to make yourself more appealing. So I love that you put this into 3 buckets. Let's talk about them each. So we'll start with processes. So recruitment isn't my specialty. That's Molly. She's the expert. So you want to hear from her. But generally, I would say, what can you do to make your candidate experience really attractive from the start? Don't make them wait for weeks. Contact them right away. Be fun in your interview. Like, I've had some interviews where it's all negative, negative, negative. Give me some hope that there's at least something constructive and inspiring about this place that I want to join, right? Talk to them as a human and just sort of think about it from the candidate lens. What can we do to sort of inspire hope and to make people feel excited about joining this organization, and continue that process through to say, if this is the job, how do I need to test for it? What are the questions I ask in the interview? How do I onboard? How do I connect with them a few months in? How do I give them a really good start? Because a lot of our jobs will be entry level, and we want them to build and grow a career for the long term. So thinking about that process from the very first impression all the way through to their retirement day. What is their journey? I think that's a really interesting lens to take, because you're looking at them as a long-term investment, not just got to get a seat, filled. Over to you, Molly.
Yeah.
That's
well,
great,
I was going to say, Raelynn knows that I could talk about this for the rest of the hour. So I'll try to keep it brief. What I would say is the first thing is to test your process. You go out and apply. I've been doing this for organizations, and I can tell you, I had one that misspelled the word applicant on one of their websites, and I had another that I couldn't get my application to go through because they required a 12-digit password and other things so first of all, know what your current process is and test it. I think that would be the easiest thing, and test it from your phone, because 81% of your candidates are going to start on their phone. So that would be the first easy tool. I think what Raelynn said is great. It's about speed. It's about humanity. It's about treating them like a person. What I would say fundamentally is stop thinking about your process as a way to opt people out, but work on getting people to opt in. So in other words, don't eliminate people because they don't answer one question right or something like that. Try to figure out where they might fit in your organization. Maybe they're not an RN, but they might be in school to be one. So could they start as another role? Or, try to figure out, so they applied to be this, they're not ready for that yet. So let's move them over here and let's hire them for that, and then give them a pathway to move over. So it's about opting people in versus finding ways to filter people out would be my general thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And internally, we recently also spoke with Springfield Clinic, who made an amazing list, Newsweek's list of top employers in the US. And we talked to them about what makes them a top employer. Why do people want to stay with them? And one of the things they did talk about internal growth opportunities. And Trevor mentions in the chat that when he was recently looking at some articles, and he had applied to a company that had leadership development for applicants, and he said that he felt appreciated just by applying. So that's a really good example. But Springfield Clinic also is really doing a lot around employee engagement and, again, professional growth opportunities. So opportunities for more staff at starting level positions, giving them a chance to train up into some of the many other roles that they have in that organization that's of interest to those employees. So and they're really proactive about it, really intentional, which is key, right? It has to become part of the culture of the organization for this to work really well. Another example, speaking of, since we're talking about processes, this process policy crossover is around the benefits, and people are so interested in what benefits they can get at another organization. And I often hear tuition assistance, especially in the US, is something that is really of interest for healthcare organizations. But something I heard recently was interesting. It's really key to make sure your existing employees know about the benefits they have access to.
Yeah.
So you have to sell to your own employees the benefits they have as much as you would sell to potential employees about the benefits they could have, because there's a real challenge where existing employees think, well, hospital B down the street is pushing me because they have these benefits. That sounds great. Maybe I'm going to go. Meanwhile, they don't realize what they're giving up back at the organization. So organizations need to think about that internally as well in terms of processes and making sure employees know about and take advantage of their benefits. It's going to cost money if they take advantage of them, but you want them to know about it and take advantage of them.
And the programs to support them, like healthcare, mental health and that kind of stuff, right? We've got great family assistance programs. Need to make sure people know about them.
Right, for sure. Okay, great. So what about the other bucket of policies? What do you have for examples on the policy side? Molly, do you have something there?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about, I call it modernizing your benefits to today's staff. And so the two I would give you to point to that would probably be the easiest would be bereavement. I think most, at least in the US, organizations have a very thin list of people that qualify for bereavement. And with non-traditional families and people living different and being raised by, you might be raised by your aunt, and yet they're not on the bereavement list. And when they pass away, it is a big loss for you. So I think making sure that policy is inclusive for everybody that is important to your employees. I would advocate that that's all the policy needs to say. If it's somebody important to you, that qualifies. The second one I would point people to is holidays. And does it have to, if I celebrate non-Christian holidays, could I switch out and maybe work on Christmas and have Ramadan or one of the other holidays off that are important to me? So I think just those two things would start to tell both your internal employees and your external candidates. So there's your both sides of your coin.
Yep.
That you hear and you understand and you value all of the employees in your
and that last example is going to do so much for your organization. And most organizations have intention and goals to be more inclusive, right? Have a more diverse workforce. There's another fabulous example of how we're going to address that goal, that intention, and also keep people over the longer term and attract more people as well. That's great.
I was looking for the little light bulb reaction. I wanted to, every time I read one of Molly's posts online, light bulb, because she's just thinking about things differently, and I love it. So we're talking now about policies that you can design to retain and attract people. One of the most interesting things that's come out of COVID is our ability to work remotely and to offer flexibility to people, because they can work from home sometimes, or they might want to work 7 to 3 instead of 8 to 5. So I think, looking at these policies for flexibility and accommodations for people so they can bring their whole selves when they can, right? We have a lot of restrictions around remote work because of unions or policies or whatever. I would say let's re-examine these. Look at people as a trusted investment, that you want to nurture and grow for the long term. With that lens, you would say, absolutely, you've got a sore back today, work from home. I know you're going to get your work done. And I know when I look back over my career, it was those moments of compassion or empathy that made me stay in a difficult job. We can all do tough things if we have a manager who sees us, who trusts us. And so when you look at, all the literature on this, there's a SCARF model for, handling stress by David Rock and the Neuro Leadership Institute, talking about when we feel stress under these different degrees, what we can do to help someone feel confident about their status, security, autonomy, relatedness, fairness. These are things that help us get through the tough stress, maybe handle some of our challenges with burnout, because we have managers who are offering us some increased autonomy or flexibility in a fair way across the board. So I think remote work would be one of my main policies to say, let's re-examine, especially if we want to attract people in this competitive market.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's great. Molly, anything else that you wanted to add about that? I interrupted you a minute ago.
No, what I would say is, again, these are just some. I mean, I think you can look. I'm looking. I did see in the comments something about corporate wellness. I think absolutely
Mm-hmm.
anything you can do, again, to enhance your benefits also helps you attract. So it's both helping your internals and moving
Yeah.
more externals to apply with you.
Yeah.
So.
And Brenda asked that question, and she also mentions that her organization gives employees 3 personal days to use each year. So that it gets to, Molly, to your idea too about giving people an opportunity to take different holidays off that aren't standard in the organization. So that's a good way to do that.
And just one further thought, if you don't mind,
Mhm.
Patrick, sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt.
please.
When Molly talked about modernizing the workforce and thinking about what does this demographic need, it's very local. So this team in, Barrie, Ontario might really want us to look at, I don't know, some sort of employee of the month award, right? Like that might be really important to them. This other group might say, I really, but we've got aging parents. Can we do something about our dental plan to support our parents who have really high dental bills? I don't know, like I'm thinking outside the box on, and that's where you really hope that people would say, if your demographic is young mothers, maybe it's childcare, or if it's mothers with kids who are university age, maybe it's scholarships or tuition reimbursement, or, you got to think about what really matters to the people that are working for you.
For
Be
sure.
creative.
Yeah, that makes lots of sense. Kevin in the chat is asking, he's got a lot of questions, and I think I'm going to make sure he sees your LinkedIn profiles because I think he'll be great for him to connect with you and maybe keep this conversation going, and others as well. Some of Kevin's comments are around engagement and communication, keeping people engaged and communication interesting. And I think we're probably going to talk about that in the next section when we talk about the culture, but maybe I could put that out there now and we could think about that question in terms of the recruitment, selling the organization, and also as we flow into the next topic around leadership training and competencies, how do we what are good ways to communicate and keep things light, engaging, informative, but still in a positive tone and keep people engaged? What are some thoughts about that?
Molly, do you want me to go first?
Sure.
I have a very recent example from yesterday that I'd love to share.
Yeah,
But
true.
I like that Kevin is asking these kinds of questions. What's the data? How do we do this? Like he's the kind of leader. I'm excited to see what you do with your team, as Kevin, because I think you've got the right mentality for it. So communications is tricky because some people want a 2-sentence email. I like to write longer ones. So my communication style might not work for you, but where you can, be humane, have some fun, have a joke, share a cartoon. Liz Fosslin has some great images that we post up on our boards to talk about, some mental health issues in the context of you can handle this. You can find her books and her images online. Yesterday we had a huddle where we brought in an organization to have happy hour. They are an interactive group out of California, improv, entertainment based. Founded in healthcare. They did things to help Alzheimer's patients. Now they've designed this program where they come in and they join you virtually on Zoom. And we had, I think, 45 people attend, a lot of introverts who like to keep their cameras off. But it was a really fun hour. Not everyone had their cameras on for the first bit. After the breakout sessions, almost everybody had their camera on and they were smiling, and we danced out of the room at the end. It was well worth the time. And I know not everyone could join because they had busy, had to be on the phones. But where we can offer a little bit of levity and fun in our workday goes a long way to building community and helping with mental health issues.
Wonderful. Wow. Well, on that note, let's keep that topic going because we wanted to talk next about, again, leadership competencies, the culture of the organization, and how what leaders need from their organization in order to be able to lead their workforce in a positive way, attract people, keep people in the organization. What are some thoughts about training needs that people are lacking right now, and maybe some good examples?
I'll let Molly go first.
Okay.
Well, Raelynn, I was going to say, you're the retention and leadership training. Here's what I would say is that, to me, the very most important people in any organization are those frontline leaders. And those leaders so make sure you're taking care of them through training and support, because many of them have faced because they're responsible for scheduling, they've faced and had to, end up on the floor, covering shifts themselves. They're tired in many cases. So what you can do to support, train, give them the tools they need to be successful would be key to retaining them, and then in turn their staff. So Raelynn has more, I think, tactical things that go with it.
I could talk about leadership training all day long. I think it is the best investment. So here we go. So there's so much we can do. Almost any topic can help to build a stronger leader, starting out with empathy training, communication skills. Many of our leaders move into these roles without a lot of leadership training. I had the benefit of being able to go and take my MBA, take some time off work to do it. Not everyone can do that. So where can we offer quick wins to help managers become, more empathetic, communicative, whatever the case may be? Again, it comes down to the individual, because this person might be really engaged in developing their career and taking a master's program. This one might just want to learn Excel, right? Help people with the tools that they need. So, one thing I wanted to mention as part of this, leadership development, the work done by Gallup says that 52% of employees would have stayed in their job if somebody just asked them to stay or had a conversation with them. So that's why we did the stay interview webinar that we had in the summer to coach leaders on how to do a proper stay interview. And I think Patrick's going to share a link to that. That to me is fundamentally, how managers communicate with their teams, either in a difficult situation, a challenge or a performance review, or a stay interview where you just want to learn more about them and engage with them. Active listening is the L, being authentic, understanding where people are coming from, not assuming anything, being genuine and authentic in your communication, setting your intentions before you go in, offering hope for the future and ask them to be part of a redesign of the workplace. That's the LAUGH acronym that we'll share. And then overall, laughter, right? We talked about the importance of laughter for your own mental health, but for building connections and community in the organization. So I would say, focus on leadership development for that middle manager who just needs to know how to communicate and engage, make eye contact, show up, be the kind of leader that doesn't make assumptions about people, who is, kind, who is, thoughtful, who is interested in engaging. Those are the kind of leaders that are going to retain our nurses, our frontline staff. So that would be my high ROI training on that one.
That's great. And you'll see, Raelynn, I'm sharing the link or sharing the image of your blog about turnover being $1 trillion preventable problem, excuse me. And you have talked about a lot of the things here in the blog. So we'll put that link in the chat as well, so people can find that as well. So thanks for sharing that. Well, that's very helpful. So, but I'm curious, how challenging is it to convince organizations that they need to do that, to invest in leadership training? What's your experience been on that?
I'll jump in on this.
Yeah.
So as I talked earlier, finance speaks one way, HR speaks another. And, I had a CEO of a hospital in Ontario say, most times our CFO is saying, cut. We need to streamline the organization. And then you're hiring back because you need those frontline people. And when I said, well, how many nurses do you have in your hospital? I think there was 4,000 times $75,000 to replace the nurse. Big dollars that are leaking out, and where no one's calculating it. So I think we need to help HR leaders through training. Very simple ROI methodology. Like, I both know this because we have our MBAs, but this is a very coachable skill to say this is how you can demonstrate the high return on investment of leadership training, because you can show how much it costs, but you can also say these are the benefits. If you reduce your turnover rate, if you reduce absenteeism, those are some key quantifiable, tangible metrics that you can put into a calculation and say, this definitely shows a positive ROI. And design that program so you cross the finish line. So you don't just hire someone to come in and train 20 people and they have a great lunch and they mark the instructor with an 8 out of 10. What behaviors do we need? Is it having those mental health conversations? Do they need a script? Do they need to role play? Do you need to hold them accountable? right? We want to see the behavior change. So we need to design our programs effectively so we cross the finish line. We don't just spend money out the door. So I think that's how you start to have a conversation with your CFO or your CEO to say, this is really worth our time. Our turnover rate is out of the roof. We have to keep people, and this is how I can show that it's healthy for the bottom line.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it seems like a lot of this comes down to people, individuals and organizations being open to some change, right? It's so often we run into the people and the organizations that are really struggling with making progress are the ones who are just, this is the way we've always done it, right? And we're not really open to exploring either myself or the organization and doing things differently. So those are some good examples. Molly, anything else you wanted to add about that before we move on to the next piece?
Like I say, I think that building a business case is a skill that HR folks need to better equip themselves with.
Right.
Because I was telling you all, I think the other day, everybody used to say to me in my old role, you get everything you ask for. And I'm like, yeah, because I build a business case and give them what they're going to get for the investment. So that's a really key skill going forward, I think.
For sure. Actually, before we move on, I'm going to share Trevor's question about 360 assessments. What is your take on using 360 assessments as a baseline for leadership development with your team? It's sort of putting you on the spot to see if either of you have thoughts about that.
I can jump in, just offer something quick, and then Molly,
Sure.
I'm sure you can talk. It depends on how they're done. I've had people say, I love 360s. It's great to get that feedback. And I've had people say, I hate 360s. It was traumatic for me to receive this feedback. So I think you need to coach people contributing to these to say, this is why we're doing it. This is how you offer constructive feedback. This is an opportunity to tear someone apart. We need to do this thoughtfully. And so I think, a lot of times we just throw them out and we email into 100 people and then you get this mixed bag, like, right? You know what you need to work on. And it is helpful to hear from your peers or from your former bosses, current bosses. But I really think people need to be coached on how to do it effectively so you get really good data.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's really the key. It's how it's done. And that if you can think of, and I always say feedback is a gift. So, but some gifts we return, right? And some we keep and use every day. So I think also in how it's presented to the person receiving the feedback is, that's one person's opinion, and it's just that, it's their opinion, and it's not, it may or may not be true.
And just one other thought on feedback and that kind of mindset for it. Often we only give feedback once a year, right? We go through this awkward performance management, and no one really coaches us how to do it. It's like, let's expect it in your job, just do it. When I joined Toastmasters, I wanted to join to improve my public speaking skills so I could do this kind of thing. And the added bonus of Toastmasters was to learn how to give and receive feedback, because every week 3 speeches are given and 3 evaluations are given. And so you learn, how do you provide feedback on your feet, not a lot of prep, kindly, with compassion, so the person can grow. And when you do it, more and more, you get better at it. And I thought, this is actually a great leadership skill for me to take and to be open to, as you say, Molly, this is a gift. I want people to give me feedback so I learn and grow, as opposed to, oh no, here it comes. I'm going to get fired. So yeah.
I have another example of a small piece that can lead to this and be part of the culture of the organization. I think it was last week or the week before in one of our regular team calls with our Applichat Healthcare coworkers. Our President Adam asked us to break into groups. We were into small groups my group was 3 on our Zoom chat. And we were asked to give each of the others in the room 3 positive things that we've observed about them in the workplace, and 1 piece where we think could be something they could help them grow, for example. Not criticism, but something that we thought could help them grow. And let me say, it really makes you think, makes you really stop and think about both sides, not only the things that are challenging, but also the positive things. You really have to stop and think about what you want to share. You also want to be kind of equal with the others in the room, right? Don't express lots of positive about one and not about the other. But it was a real positive way to get us thinking. And I think in my little group, it brought us together in terms of having conversations we never would have had otherwise. And that's part of becoming part of the culture of our workplace, just as an example. Okay, that's great. Well, thanks for your response to that question. So let's go to our last sort of theme for this discussion, and it's about those practical things that the individuals who are tuning in today and listening, and the organizations as well, what can individuals and leaders do to have an impact on this problem of retention and all of the tentacles that are touching it? Molly, did you want to start with that?
Yeah, and I'll start from the recruitment side. I would say make it easy for people to move, and harder for leaders to be talent hoarders. That's my term for when I don't want somebody to leave my team and grow, because then I have to find somebody new. And I think if recruitment is humming at the way it should, you should be like, okay, next up, we'll get another great person in here. But I want that other person to be able to grow. So removing barriers for people to move, making it less time bound, making it easy, inspecting your process. I can't tell you how many times I do these audits for organizations, and I come back and I'm like, you can have your recruiters apply for one of their jobs. Simple, easy test to see if they get through and what they think. I used to challenge my recruiters once a year, apply for our jobs, for one of your jobs, and apply somewhere else, and come back and tell me what you think. And every year we made improvements to our application because of it. So it's the little things that will add up to big things.
Those very practical things. We often talk to our healthcare clients who, for one example, is the ATS. Well, everyone needs people to apply, get into their ATS system, right? But the organizations that we work with that are pretty successful on getting people hired are the ones that say, don't worry about the ATS. We want to talk to them. We want to get a relationship with them. And then we will hold their hand and get them into the ATS. I was talking to another person yesterday who said she's asking for a terminal, like a computer where nurses can come in. They have to apply on the ATS. They can come in and do it at the front desk if they need help, and then we can help them through it. So that example. Another one is the resume need. So we're trained, we always need a resume to have on file for people. Well, what if a passive candidate who's just started to look doesn't have a resume ready? Do we really want to turn them away, or do we want to start the conversation again and then get that paperwork and check those boxes later on? So those are some things that we see on our side as well. Raelynn, over to you.
I agree. Phone call, help them navigate, get them in. They're in that funnel. Get them employed, because we need people. We need to attract them from different sectors. We need to get high school students thinking about healthcare. So there's lots of ways to really improve the recruitment side. If you think about it from a humane, fun, engaging, quick. We need to be competitive, so we need to be creative about it. So thank you, Molly, for the recruitment side. On the retention side, I would say acting on your last employee engagement survey. There's a lot of people who do surveys every year and nothing is done. And so then when you go to do the next one, guess what? They're cynical, jaded. They might not even participate. So I would say don't do one more survey until you act on the last one in some capacity. And sometimes people say, well, I don't have time. It's hard. I'm busy. We designed a process where, okay, Thursday, we're getting together in a room. We're bringing 2 45-minute sessions. We're putting out the big categories that we identified: workload, work-life balance, communications, creating fun and engagement, 5 categories, and ask people to brainstorm quick, move around the room. You only have 10 minutes, go. And we came up with hundreds of ideas, solutions, not reiterating the problem, but hundreds of ideas for what we can do. Put them on a mural board, a virtual whiteboard, so people can see the colors and the categories. And now we're moving them into short-term, medium-term, long-term, where you can say, quick win. Yes, we're going to have a potluck next week. We're going to do something. We're going to go curling for the other Canadian.
There's the Canadian. Yeah, not everyone's going to get this.
It's going to be weird. I'm
Google
going.
It. Yeah.
And then medium term, okay, we've got some challenging workflow process. We've got to, redesign. We've got to reorganize. Those are going to take a little bit more time. Who wants to be involved? Let's get to some solutions. Long term, we might not be able to put a gym in the building, right? So tell me why okay, I get it. But at least you're doing the short term, medium term. You have this data already in your organization. You don't have to do something new. Or you can take a quick little survey monkey to say 3 questions. How are you doing, team? Where are you feeling? What do you need? Tell me what would it take for you to recommend this organization to your friends and neighbors. Give me something to work with, right? So you don't always have to be stuck to the rigid annual process, but just be engaging and responsive. That's what people want.
Wonderful. That's
And
a good
Raelynn, don't you
overall
find that a
theme,
lot
right?
of times it's the little tiny thing?
Eye contact.
Like I remember we had a unit that was really struggling, and we went in and we said, okay, what do you need? And it was like, can you revamp our break room? Can we get another refrigerator? And that we were like, that's it. I mean, sometimes it's the little things. I call them rocks in your shoes that is rubbing against somebody and just making every day a little harder. So collecting rocks from everybody's shoes is always another good exercise. So what is that rock in your shoe?
And sometimes it's eye contact. I'd like the VP or the director to make eye contact and say good morning when she walks through the room.
Yeah, for
Behaviors
sure.
of
Human,
management.
be human, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, and again, you've touched on that in your blog as well. I shared that a moment ago. So if people go into the chat, you'll find the links to both Molly and Raelynn's blogs. They're there in the chat. And if you're watching the recording, you could rewind and find them on the screen a moment ago as well. But you can also reach out on LinkedIn again to Raelynn, Molly, and myself. I'm putting those on the screen. And someone asked again about the links to our other webinars. If you go to my online business card, that's on the screen there as well. You'll see a few things that you can do to accessing our free resources, including finding all of our past webinars, including the Stay interview webinar that Molly and Raelynn and I did a few months ago. So that will be there. The other thing I want to do just before we wrap up, well, maybe I'll ask you if there's any other closing comments either of you have before we do move on.
Brittany's question is a good one, if you don't mind just allowing me to answer that one. She said, how can you convince management to implement a survey in this style without taking away from productivity of those individuals and their tasks for the day? Yes. People are so busy, they don't even have time to go to the bathroom sometimes, right? So this is hard. I have a team of 70. We couldn't bring everyone out for a 2-hour session, which would have been ideal. So we designed 2 45-minute sessions back to back, set some context, did an icebreaker, had this very quick fire. We're just brainstorming. It's not the end of the project. We're just starting it. Not everyone could attend. We didn't get 100%. But again, if you try for 80, 90%, you're going to get a lot of good information. And I guess on the convince side, like we're talking about developing a business case for some of these things. There are skills that we can help you learn to do a business case for this, because what is the impact of not addressing some of these things? You're going to lose people. They're going to leave for the next job, and you've invested so much time and energy in them. When they leave, it's going to create more work on you as the manager. So I would say it's crucial. You're here today because you realize retention is more important perhaps than recruitment. These are the sorts of things that can help keep your staff. It's worth your time and energy. And you will see rewards from people who start to get it and to say, you see me, you hear me. I know you can't fix everything, but maybe next year, right? We can talk about higher wages, because now we're no longer leaking a boat of people.
Right.
Anyway.
For sure. Wonderful. Molly, any other last thoughts?
And I would go back to, it shouldn't be recruitment or retention. I think it's an and I think the more that we can get folks to understand that it is an and, and anything you do for one helps the other, will help you continue to build that business case. And recruiters want people to stay in the long run. So they're going to help you find those things. They can also tell you from a candidate perspective, what are candidates asking for that maybe would help our internal people and would help us be more competitive in the marketplace. So don't forget them. They're another group that you can certainly
absolutely, and that's all about employee engagement, right? Letting people have input into their organization, which is another element of retention.
And just one other thought that comes to mind, because Molly always inspires thought for me. HR people are part of this challenge too, and how frustrating must it be to constantly be advertising and working to bring people in and feed this pipeline, to have them leave? Like, they're getting burnt out as well. So what can we do
Yeah.
to help our HR leaders have the skills so that they're having their heads above water as well? It's everyone's responsibility to create a great culture. It's not just the HR team.
For sure.
So
Oh, that's a good closing comment, and we certainly filled the time. And I know there's a lot more that could be said, but we'll need to wrap it up, and we can think about future conversations. I just shared in the chat again because I think it didn't work earlier. We had some connection problems with YouTube earlier. The link to our healthcare recruitment leaders exchange. So again, for directors and above and working in talent acquisition in healthcare, feel free to check that out. And I also promised to share some information about our upcoming webinar, the next one that will be coming up. Let me bring that up on the screen. And that is going to be, here it is, a conversation on February 16th about the experience we had at Applichat Healthcare in 2022 about our 5 stages to hiring more RNs after we were successful helping healthcare organizations place 251 permanent RNs in 2022. So again, I'm going to put that link in the chat. There it is. So feel free to sign up for that. We'd hope to have more people joining the next event as well. We had a great turnout for today. This is a really important topic of great interest. I do hope people will connect with both of you, Raelynn and Molly, and follow up that conversation. And thanks so much for sharing. And we look forward to future chats about this topic. So thanks everyone for joining, and we hope to see you in future webinars and connect with us offline as well. Thanks everyone.
thanks, Patrick. Have a great Friday.
Thank you.
You
Thanks,
too.
everyone.
Thanks,
Take
Molly.
care.
Thanks, Raelynn. Bye-bye.